We also talked a little bit more about the war in Iran with retired Naval Intelligence Commander Dr. Paul Chabot. He weighed in on what's in the possible deal with Iran, also what he says is not in the deal and where we're going to go from here. That conversation also took place on the Pulse. Take a look.
So you've heard recently, of course, in the last few hours, President Trump has essentially said, you know what, we'll bomb the hell out of them if they don't follow these rules. Iran, namely being named as the one responsible for holding up their end of the deal. But I found it noteworthy that Israel also has a huge part in this to make sure that the deal stays solid. Talk for a moment about that.
Yeah, unfortunately, Israel was not really part of these negotiations at all. You've seen some bluster from the White House to Israel. Israel's sort of taken a hands-off approach in having any sort of a conflict with Trump. They basically said, look, Trump, the president and the United States are the big partners in this, but it wasn't just the United States. It was Israel that went together in this. Israel was a huge part of why we went forward. They provided a lot of the intelligence as well as the military assets. Look, today, when you look at the polling, new Fox News poll out, how do Americans feel about Iran ending their nuclear capability? Across the board, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, about 64% do not feel like this deal or a ceasefire is going to stop them. And what's interesting is you go back to 2015, we're at the exact same polling number then about how Americans felt about Obama's deal then. So in many ways, we feel like we're repeating history, but Americans are very wary today about where this goes forward, especially Israel.
You know, when we look at what happened just over a year ago when Iran was in conflict with Israel, you heard about their nuclear program essentially being obliterated at that time. Yeah. And then we were reminded by many military experts that perhaps it doesn't take very long for a country like Iran to serendipitously rebuild. So if this deal is signed by the time the ink dries, what's to say that they're not going to go ahead and try this again? And what are the protocols in place to make sure that doesn't happen?
Yeah, just studying history is going to be our best success going forward. Look, since the 2000s, Iran has a history of hiding their nuclear program. The IAEA, which has the duty in many ways of doing these inspections, came out and said, look, we can't trust Iran. We don't feel that they are telling us the truth. But also, just before we went basically to war with them months ago, they were at 60% enriched uranium. Now, you only need about 3 or 4% if you're going to do nuclear power. When you get to 60%, you're at a quick jump within weeks to get to 90% enriched uranium, which in itself is a nuclear weapon. They had over 1,000 pounds now buried. This deal, this ceasefire does not call for any new weapons inspections, doesn't call for an end to their ballistic missiles. The other fear, and Israel is right to have this, is Iran has shown that their ballistic missiles can launch much farther than expected. Remember, months ago, they fired 2 at our bases in Diego Garcia. That distance could reach bases in Europe, Germany, Britain, and all of our bases in the Middle East. None of that right now addresses that, and it doesn't call for an end to their enrichment.
Talk for a moment about the 60 days, the expiration point of a deal like this. I keep hearing 60 days is as long as, for instance, the Strait of Hormuz being opened without tolls for 60 days. Talk about that. Is that an arbitrary number? What happens after that?
Yeah, when you look at how long it took for this deal to come forward, and also when you look at who signed it, you know, there's a political and then a military thought. Look, the military wants to go fight and win. The political pressure on the Trump administration has been immense based on oil prices, the economy, looking for a way to end this. We know militarily that you can't win an outright war without putting troops on the ground, in essence, and Trump and the American people would not go for that, and we understand that. So the courses of action that were put forward did not bring together the results, and so now you're seeing a ceasefire deal relatively weak, to be direct and honest with you, and in many ways, we can fairly say it's kicking the can down the road another 60 days. When you read those 14 points, in short, what it says is, we're going to get together and readdress some of these deeper conflicts. That does nothing to stop Iran from doing what they've done historically, which is hide and deceive. And remember, they've got 4 active terror proxies throughout the region, and there's nothing in the framework that talks about those proxies.
Now, you worked for Clinton, you worked for Bush. In so many ways, you're simply a mission-oriented man who obviously did the work under 2 different presidents with 2 different parties. When you hear President Trump say that this is very different than 2015 when President Obama was trying to make a deal, in just objectively speaking, looking at this from what you can see, is it very different?
No, today it is not. Could it end up different with stricter regulations and actual end to their enrichment program? Absolutely. But this has proven to be so difficult regardless of administrations going back decades. So this was never an easy task. The American people were not hot on us doing this to begin with. Sure. And as we saw, most importantly, we lost 13 Americans, and I served in Iraq. We lost thousands of Americans who were killed because of Iranian IEDs. The military knows how to defeat an adversary, but as you know, there's a political realm here, which is looking to lower oil prices and pay attention to the midterms. And I think that right now is what's taking precedence, unfortunately.
Dr. Paul Chabot, we thank you so much for joining us. You have invaluable perspective, and we always appreciate you being with us here. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.